This is a demonstration of problem 13.3b, payroll tax entries. Yellow Company pays its office employee payroll weekly. Below is a partial list of employees and their payroll data for June. Vacation pay for June is also listed. So the problem gives us the employees' names, their earnings to date as of May 31st, their weekly pay amounts that they're going to be earning in June, and vacation pay that that two of the employees will be receiving in June. The remainder of this top area I have made into a payroll register where I have calculated the amount of the withholdings and payroll tax expense. And I would encourage you to do the same thing for your problem because it will help you when you get ready to record your entries for the salaries and wages expense and payroll tax expense as the problem requires. So how did I make the payroll register? Well, first it states in the problem that the federal income tax withheld is 12% of wages. So I made a column for the federal withholding. And to calculate the amounts for each employee, I took their weekly pay and I multiplied it by the 12% rate. So each of these amounts is 12% of the employee's weekly pay. Then I made a total for all of the employees for the week, and then this is the monthly total, which is the weekly pay amount times 4. The next thing the problem tells us is that union dues withheld are 1% of the wages. So I made a column for the union dues, and each one of these is 1% of the employee's weekly pay. So each one of these calculates 1%, and this is the total for the week, and this would be times 4 for the month. The next thing the problem states is that vacations are taken the second and third week of June by James and Ping, and we will see when we get to the entries for the second and third week that for James and Ping we will be debiting a liability account instead of an expense account, because remember that vacation pay is expensed or recorded in the period that it is earned, and so when the employee takes it, we debit a liability instead of an expense account, and we'll see how that works when we record those entries. The next thing the problem states is that the state unemployment tax rate is 2.5% and the federal is 0.8%, both on a $7,000 maximum. So the first thing you need to do is to determine if any of your employees are still subject to state unemployment tax or federal unemployment tax, because once the employee reaches $7,000 in gross pay, the employer is no longer required to pay state unemployment tax or federal unemployment tax on that employee. So we notice that only the employee, Joseph Black, is still subject to state unemployment tax and federal unemployment tax in June. So to calculate the amounts that the employer will pay, we take the weekly pay that Joseph earns and we multiply that for state unemployment tax by 2.5% or 0.025, and for federal unemployment tax we multiply it by 0.8% or 0.008. And since Joseph is the only employee that is going to be that we are paying state or federal unemployment tax, the weekly amount will be the same, and then the monthly amount that the employer will remit would be times 4. The next thing the problem gives us is that the FICA rate is 7.65% on employee and employer on a maximum of $128,400 per employee. And then it also says that within that there is a 1.45% rate that is charged both the employer and employee for an employee's wages in excess of $128,400. So we know that the OASD portion is capped at $128,400, but the Medicare portion, the 1.45% rate, continues on all of the employees' wages. But again, we would look to see whether or not any of our employees have met the $128,400 maximum on the OASDI portion, and we see that none of them have, so we know that all of our employees are going to pay the entire 7.65%. So to calculate the amount of the FICA that will be withheld from each of the employees' paychecks, we would take the weekly pay and multiply each one of those by 7.65%, which I have done, and then we will get a total for all of the employees for the week. Now remember that FICA is matched by the employer. So not only do we deduct these amounts from the employee's pay, but the employer also has to pay that same amount. So the monthly amount that would have to be remitted would not be times 4, but it would actually be times 8, because we would be paying it, both deducting it from the employee's pay and also paying it again by the employer. Now the next thing I have done is I have calculated the net pay for each of the employees. So remember that the employee's gross pay is listed in this column, but we would subtract the withholding, the FICA, and the union dues in order to determine each employee's net pay. And I have done that in this column, and then I have summed it for the weekly pay for all 4 employees. So again, this payroll register is what I'm going to be using to record the entries for each of the weekly pay as we are asked to do in the problem, and show the entry to remit all of the withholding at the end of the month. So let's see how this will work. Our first entry for the first payroll, we would debit salaries and wages expense. But we're going to record first all of our withholdings as liability accounts from the employee's pay, because we're recording their gross pay. And then we will also record a liability for the amount of their net pay. So we know that our employee withholding for the week is the sum, or $812.40, as shown on the payroll register. The total FICA withheld is $517.91, and the union dues are $67.70. The net pay on the payroll register is $5,371.99, and I have my spreadsheet adding all of those up, and you see that it does equal the gross pay, $6,770. Now remember, we also have to record each week the employer's portion, or the payroll tax expense. So that's a separate entry. So again, remember that the employer has to match the employee's FICA. So again, we're going to record another credit to the liability account for the FICA taxes that the employer has to pay. And then we are also going to enter a liability for the FUTA, or federal unemployment tax, for the one employee, and then the state unemployment tax for the employee. And that will give us our total employer tax of $538.04. Now, in week 2 is when we have employees that are on vacation. And as I stated, when the employees take the vacation, we would be debiting the liability account for salaries and wages payable that we set up when we recorded the vacation expense when it was earned. So the vacation expense that's shown is actually for 2 weeks, because remember, Mark James earns $2,000 a week and Christina Ping earns $960. So this entry that we're going to make for the weeks for payroll 2 and 3, we're only going to make one entry. We would actually enter it twice, but it would be exactly the same. So we're just going to demonstrate it one time. It's pretty much the same entry, except instead of debiting salaries and wages expense for the whole $6,770, we debit the liability account that we would have set up for $2,960 for the 2 weeks for the employees that are on vacation. The other salaries and wages expense would be $3,810. And how did I get that? I just took $6,770 and I subtracted the amount of the vacation pay, and that gave me the amount of the salaries and wages expense that would be recorded for the other 3 employees. Now our withholding tax is going to be exactly the same. Nothing changed. The employees drew the same vacation pay that they earned during the normal week. So our withholding taxes payable would again be $812.40. FICA is the $517.91. The union dues are $67.70, and the net pay is still $5,371.99. Next, we would record the payroll tax expense for the employer portion, and again there would be no changes. Our FICA matching amount is the $517.91. The federal unemployment tax, again, $488, and the state unemployment tax is $1525. So the total payroll tax expense for the entries for weeks 2 and 3 is exactly the same as it was in week 1, $538.04. In payroll entry for week 4, the employees are no longer on vacation, so all of the payroll for salaries and wages will go to the expense account, and we would record the same amounts for the withholding for federal, FICA, union dues, and then our net pay. And our payroll tax expense for the 4th week would again be the same amounts. Now, at the end of the month, we have been withholding all of the taxes and union dues, and we have also been recording and accruing our own employer payroll tax expense. But now we are going to have to remit all of those amounts to the proper authorities or to the government. So we need to record that entry and write a check and pay those amounts. Now remember, in the payroll register, I have been accruing those amounts for the monthly amounts. The withholding amount would be this weekly amount times 4. As we said, the FICA, though, is going to be 8 times because the employer is required to match it. The union dues are 4 times, and the state and federal unemployment are also times 4. So now we're going to record that entry to pay all of the withholding that we have been doing for the month. So we would debit withholding taxes payable for $3,249.60. We would debit FICA taxes payable for $4,143.28. Our union dues would be debited for $270.80. FUTA, or federal unemployment tax, is $19.52, and state unemployment is $61. So the total for all of the withholding to remit it is $7,744.20, and we would write a check and credit cash. So that is the conclusion for the demonstration for problem 13.3b.